Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for inviting me, and thank the museum and the museum staff, and thank you all for coming. Today we're going to focus on Mr. Robert Colescott and his painting, Knowledge of the Past is the Key to the Future, Upside Down Jesus. But first, a little about me and why I picked Robert Colescott. And why I picked Robert Colescott. I was born in Houston, Texas, and my formative years I grew up in the South, in a little rural town way back in the deep South, during the Jim Crow era, I lived there until I was about 13, and then we moved to California. My mother had moved out to California, and my brother and sister joined them. In Texas, I lived with my grandparents. My great-grandmother also lived with us, and my great-grandmother was born a slave. So she talked a lot about slavery and those slavery times. And in the South, it was really difficult to be accepted as a real person. I didn't quite understand it because I'm this young kid, and I'm saying, wow, why is that door marked colored and that one marked white? And my grandfather explained to me, don't go in that door because there are repercussions. But he wouldn't let us drink from the colored drinking fountains, and I didn't see a movie until I was about 14 years old because black people had to pay the same price, but they had to go up in the balcony, and they called it nigger heaven. And my grandfather, who was a professor at one of the black universities in Texas, didn't want us to be exposed to that kind of thinking. So when we moved to California, I went to high school there, went on to college, worked as a counselor for a lot of years, and I decided, I'm really not going to save anybody, so I think it's time that I do something that I really want to do, and that was art. When I was a kid, I had done a copper tooling of my horse, and I gave it to my great-grandmother, and she said, oh, that's pretty good. And from then on, I'm an artist. That's it. In looking at Mr. Colescott's background, his background was similar. He was born in Oakland, but his parents had moved from New Orleans 2 years before his birth in order that he and his brothers and sisters might receive a real education. And so he went on to get his BFA at Berkeley, his MFA at Berkeley, and did a stint in the service. He studied with Ferdinand Laguerre in Paris at his atelier, and then he went on to start developing, in the 60s, his mature work. What Mr. Colescott started off doing is he would take old masters and take those originals, and he would Africanize them. He would blackface them. He would as Malcolm X said, flip the joke and slip the yoke. And I think that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to, all of these images of the buffoon, he would take those and flip them. He did that with some of Picasso's work. He did that with a number of masterpieces. And when he started doing that, people started paying attention because he was very clever with it, and he's a very intelligent man, which is something that was never really accepted, and still isn't accepted, that a black man can be intelligent. A man by the name of Benjamin Banneker, back in the 1900s. And most people have never heard of Benjamin Banneker. Benjamin Banneker organized Washington, D.C. He did the plan for Washington, D.C. He wasn't the principal architect, but the architect quit. He said, I'm not going to do this. You guys aren't doing what I want you to do. So they said, Banneker, you do it. Banneker was a slave. So Banneker said, okay, he did it from memory. He did it to prove that African Americans were just as intelligent as Europeans, but didn't stick. We're still working on that one. So anyway, Mr. Colescott started developing his mature work, and then once he got past the Africanizing of some of those old masters, then he started with his mature work of dealing with race and sex. And I think this is where we are. This is where we are today. One of the things that most people don't know about Mr. Colescott is Mr. Colescott in 1997 was invited to the Venice Biennale, the 47th Venice Biennale. He was the first black to be invited to in the 101 year Venice Biennale in 97. And he beat out 17 other applicants. And he was the second American after Jasper Johns. Well, the Biennale is the most prestigious art competition in the world. And he was invited to this. So now he's big time. Things are really rolling for it. And he taught at, he taught at in Pacific Northwest, taught in California, and he retired from the University of Arizona at age 71. And he died at age 73 from Parkinson's disease. He was a very, very prolific painter. This piece is done in oils. He's done things in acrylics. I mean, this one is acrylics. He's done things in oils, a lot of paper pieces. I actually showed with Mr. Colescott once, and I barely knew who he was, actually, but I had a show at the Capitol in Salem, and I walked in and there was Colescott on the wall and my paintings on the wall. I said, okay, I can deal with that. Just being a part of, just to have that kind of recognition was really, really encouraging for me, that I would be asked to show with this great man. And I think we would be hard pressed to find another artist, black or white, with the kind of creativity, the kind of intelligence that Mr. Colescott puts into his artwork. He, during the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, he fooled around with a lot of styles. Modernism, pop, cubism, and now I think he's squarely placed in the the school of postmodernism. Modernism, I don't want to get too much into that sort of stuff, but anyway, they thought there was a universal truth. Postmodernism says, no such thing. Modernism, they were dealing with, pure form, and form as the manifestation of an idea. We still see form that way. Colescott talks about form and color. Colescott's a colorist. And as you can see, color is never emotionally neutral. You look at color, you're gonna feel something. And you look at these reds and the oranges and the greens and the blues, and they all have some emotion. We all have some emotional response to these colors. And it's one of the reasons that I have an affinity for Mr. Colescott, is that my colors are pretty much the same colors. And when I was in art school, my art teacher said, where do you get these colors from? Where'd you get this palette from? I don't know. And then after a while, I said, oh, my grandmother, my great-grandmother used to make crazy quilts. And nothing goes to waste on the farm. Every scrap of material was put into these crazy quilts. I show you. And then I further understood it when I went to Africa. Colescott spent a lot of time in Africa, in Cairo and Paris. I spent some time in Paris, but I've spent a lot of time in Africa. And that's where these colors come from. Everything is like this. I said, oh, this looks familiar. And so it kind of let me know in some way who I am. One of the coolest things that ever happened to anybody, to people, and I don't think this has happened to any other race, is that our names were taken away. I don't know my name. No black person knows his name. If you see a Chinese person walking around with the name Jones, you're gonna say, oh, come on, give me a break, So me walking around with the name Smith, I have to think about that a little bit. So I signed my name, my paintings, Arvie. That's my name. The other name, I don't know. My African friends have given me last names that I can relate a little bit more to. Anyway, again, form is the manifestation of an idea. And the postmodernists believe that some people, when you looked at some of the old classical stuff, there was this meant that meant that, and that meant that. Well, I met Mr. Colescott when I was in art school. He did a talk, and after the talk, he invited all the art students over 21 out for a beer. I qualified. So I qualified in one respect. I was over 21, but I didn't have any money. So I sat down at the table, and he says, he saw I wasn't buying a beer. He said, let me buy you a beer. And so he talked about art, and I said, wow, I really like this guy, because this is the first time I had seen an African American in that role. He's up there talking about art. And I said, maybe I can do this. I saw him again at Laura Rousseau's. And he was doing a show there. Through the 80s and into the 90s, he had a one-man show every year. He did over 70 one-man exhibitions. But one lady, there were two black people in the room, so this lady thought I was Robert Colescott. I said, okay. And she says, tell me about, what is this painting doing? And I'm this arrogant art student. I know it all. I know it all. So I'm going to try to explain to this lady what that painting meant. And I tried, and she wasn't buying it. And I looked over, and Robert was right over there with this little grin on his face. And I got it. I said, oh, I really don't understand. I can't tell you what that painting is because only you know what that painting is. That painting is for you. So the next time I met Mr. Colescott, I was in grad school in Baltimore. He was showing in New York. My wife and I went up to New York to see him. He introduced me to Phyllis Klein, and I looked at this amazing, amazing work. I said, I think I can do that. I think this is worth trying. And so grad school went really well for me. I was working large format like this, had a show in New York, got published in Art in America, and in a number of other arts magazines, and was making a lot of money. And I studied with this incredible abstract expressionist, Grace Hardigan. And I said, Grace, I got to go back to Portland. She said, nah, don't do it. You're going to be a big fish in a little pond, and you're not going to get any work. She was kind of close. But the quality of life is what I was interested in and still interested in. And I still do my work. I can still do what I want to do. But as with Colescott had difficulty finding a gallery here in Portland, and I'm having somewhat the same kind of difficulty. But that doesn't keep me from doing the work that I love, and I'm doing it without any pressure of, I better not make a mistake because the show is my look at the time. So that's where I am with the work, and as I was telling Stephanie, I'm on sabbatical, loving it. I'm working every day, except when I have to prepare for a talk. But this is what I do, and my wife is very supportive. You know, I got tired of paying all of that rent downtown, so we enlarged our home, and I have this beautiful studio that we built that's mine. You know, when we were children, my brother and I, we were poor, living in Los Angeles, and I never had a room of my own. It was always that little brother kid, you know, messing up the room and stuff. So now I've got a room of my own. But as I was saying, what Mr. Colescott is using, he's using metaphor, he's using irony, he's using humor, he's using iconography to tell a story. He's created a puzzle. He's created a puzzle that we have to figure out for ourselves. So why don't we try doing that? There are compositional elements that I could talk about, how the painting is constructed. But what I'd like for you to do is to just, in a minute, just sit a minute, look at the painting, and see what you think about it. But there's a lot of stuff going on here, like this hand. This hand, the way Mr. Colescott has done that hand is the same way that Manette did the Olympia. Only that hand, she has the hand in that position. So Um, is that what he's trying to do? I don't know. I don't know. The upside down Christ. Why upside down? But anyway, so what I tell my students to do is when you're looking at a piece of artwork, relax, take a deep breath, and just look at it and describe it in your mind. What do you see? What's going on there? What's going on in terms of color distribution? How is he organizing the piece? How is he? You have form. You have scale. Like this is a shifted scale. This and this big shape here, and some of these smaller shapes. And what is he? How is he constructing this piece? And what is the puzzle? What is he trying to say about survival? Knowledge of the past is the key to the future. Upside down Jesus and the politics of survival. And we all have to deal with the politics of survival. I'll time you. What resonates for you? Jump in anytime you. We don't have a television, so my wife and I, we watch old Seinfeld episodes, and it's always funny because when there's this pause, they kind of fidget around, and then they come up with something. Yes, please jump in anytime you like.
The title, if you don't remember the past, you will repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, we don't survive it, we do that. But we always do that, we always repeat that. So, it's a question of survival. But I always see the fishermen as finding innocence in all that.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting there, they're fishing, all this stuff is going on around them, and they just are in the center of their own little serene world for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. Yes.
I see survival. These folks are working out of the trash, probably looking for sustenance. I see the fisher people fishing probably for their sustenance. The fellow up here is doing something with money, maybe some exchange, again for sustenance. So I think this fellow up here is maybe drinking for, again, maybe a survival strategy for himself. That's what I see.
Okay. All right. That's 2 votes for the fish. What else do we see here?
I always thought that the fishing scene was part of urban-rural divide, or part of leisure, and don't forget these factories, pollution's up there.
Mm-hmm.
And is the sort of jobs now, or was it the sort of jobs that are gone?
Well, good point. What was going on during the 60s, 70s, and 80s? You had, during the 60s and 70s, you had the Civil Rights Movement, you had McCarthyism, you had the communist threats, and I don't know if any of you guys remember Duck and Cover. And it was a pretty it was a pretty dangerous time, and it was a scary time. Yeah, very good point.
Lots of interesting eyes looking in different directions with a lot of intent, including the upside down Christ figure.
The bulging eyes, and eyes. The white of the eyes aren't really white, but he really shows us, you know, what he wants us to look at by really setting those off.
All the different juxtaposed faces are one of the things
Mm-hmm.
that I keep focusing on, and it's interesting that he can have so many sky, totally different sky, water, all the people around, and somehow make that all work. It's pretty remarkable.
It's a compositional ploy. It's grouping. He's the first when we look at a piece of artwork, we look at it holistically. We look at the whole thing, and then we start trying to make sense of it. So we break it down into little groups. We break it down into little groups and look at it in those little groups. What Mr. Colescott has done here is very, very clever, because he's moved these groups. It's called fusion, where these things share an edge, and he's done that all over the place. But he still kept it as individual groups. Love this guy over here.
I think it's kind of interesting that, other than the lady in the center, that none of them are looking at each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Yes.
This is a rural scene, probably the oldest,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe from the slavery, a little bit. And then industrial, maybe the Depression, and then this seems an urban kind of a hymn, maybe.
Okay. 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 All right. We're kind of thinking along the same lines here. Why do you think? What about that says a power differential? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying here? What is this relationship all about?
Well, I think he's oppressed, and he sees somebody equally oppressed, and his face has the most expression and sort of poignant feeling of empathy or sympathy and recognition of fellow suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because generally, I'm pushing this a little bit, but generally, these are probably two poor people, one being placed in charge of the other, one given simply by the color of his skin is somehow better than the other guy. And when you set up a dynamic like that, and that didn't happen incidentally, when you set up a dynamic like that, you're going to have tension. So look at the expression on the faces of those people.
See a heart in that, the fellow with the red shirt on, that shape of the red looks like a heart to me.
Oh, you're a hopeless romantic, Julie. I can see that. And I talked some with Mr. Colescott about his work. Underneath here is red. He says, every painting I start off with a red underpainting. You know who else does that? But you but you feel that. You feel it even though you don't see it. And red is the most evocative color that we have in our color spectrum. It's got the longest waves of any of the colors. So when he's playing with these reds, he's actually using a system of color distribution to get you to move through the composition.
So what's going on with the guy in the upper left-hand corner who looks like he's about to have a coronary right there?
What do you think? What do you think? You got to put me in that position with that lady at Laura Rousseau's. She was the painting. The painting was called White Boy, and she says, "Where's the white boy?" I'm going to tell her where the white boy is. There is no white boy. was the big joke. Yeah. So what's going on with him? He looks pissed off. Wonder what
Well, look at
for.
that little black baby that his maybe partner has.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I read it. but-
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Partner, maybe dad. Yeah, now what is that all about? You said maybe a pimp. Could be a pimp.
Because of the color of his shirt, the
Mhm.
money, the hat.
The hat, yeah. The tie, yeah. And he's got this pocket full of money. And what, is he buying the baby? What's going on there?
Are they even interacting at all? Or is it just the next scene?
The man and the
Yeah,
child.
is the man with the money really
ah.
interacting with the mother or not? Maybe not.
I could say, but as a compositional element, I think he's using that ploy of fusion. This becomes a grouping. Oh, boy, I love this guy in the corner, man.
I was kind of stumped with the new growth coming out of it. So
I
it has
know.
a slight hopefulness feeling into it.
Mm-hmm.
Way down the lower back,
Yeah. And look at what he's doing here. This thing is pointing us, it's called a directional line. This thing is pointing us toward there. This knee is pointing us toward there. There's something important going on here that he wants us to look at. Do the bricks have any significance? And here's the biggie. Here's the biggie. When you put Christ, when you put Jesus in something, when you put the American flag in something, when you put in these heavy symbols, people are going to react to it. And he put him upside down.
With orange hair.
I know. I know. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because we're sitting so close to it, that you would notice it further away, but I almost looked past it.
Look past.
Past the Jesus figure.
Uh-huh.
I hardly even pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's much more neutral.
Yeah.
And they've got those reds on either
Yeah.
side jumping out at you.
Yeah.
And it devises a composition.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I think he's doing in terms of color relationships. You can control your spatial relationships with the way you use the colors. Warm colors advance, cool colors recede. He's got this warm color pushing this thing forward. But somehow he kind of gets a little, I agree, he kind of gets a little lost. And I've got to believe that that's intentional. This is a man who's taught art for been, teaching art and making art for 50 years. You don't make a mistake there. He knows what he's doing, and it's up to us to kind of figure out, what is he doing? Why do you do it like that? And why the orange hair? What's he saying with that?
Well, which makes me, this may be pure flight of fancy, but somehow all of that makes me sort of think about whatever the historical piece of this was, and the baby up there probably looks more like Jesus than this.
Oh, in swaddling clothes? Oh. Wow, that's heavy. Okay, all right.
And I also think maybe survival for these folks is not answered by this upside down figure.
Yeah.
Somehow maybe it's not the answer for them.
He ain't gonna save you.
to make it.
Yeah.
The guy in the red shirt's left hand making sort of an odd symbol. It's kind of trapped underneath the other hand, and it gets the bottle.
Now, Colescott, I've seen some of his drawings. Colescott is a skilled draftsman. And so all of these distortions are, I feel, intentional. And yeah, look at that. I mean, yeah, where's, I guess that's a thumb and a little finger, but he's not concerned with that. One of the things that the postmodernists talked about is that they were rejecting reality. And all of this rough surface, the way he's using the paint is, a reporter asked me once a long time ago, arrogant art student, what do you think about Mr. Colescott's work? Hate the way he uses the paint, hate it. And then later on I realized, oh my God, did I say that? But this is intentional. This kind of immediate application of the work. Colescott says, I don't design these compositions. I work right on the canvas. I spend a lot of time and I work out my composition. He says, I just go for it. I just work right on the canvas. So that takes a lot of skill. What is going to be your center of interest? What's going to be your focal point? What are you emphasizing here? Is it this? I don't know. This young lady over here says, probably not. It's a powerful symbol. And he puts the orange hair on there, and he puts it right next to a garbage can. Does that have any significance? And we lived in Baltimore. And Baltimore is a black city with a lot of poor people. And you see a lot of these kind of scenes. And it gets so emotionally draining that sometimes you sort of make fun of it. And I'd drive down the street and I'd see all the people's belongings out on the curb. They've been kicked out of their house, and I'd call it Baltimore Moving Day. And it wasn't, these people were in dire distress. We were just back there. There's an exhibit in the Baltimore airport, and my work was featured there. So my wife and I went back to, for the big thing. And we got lost. And so I don't generally talk to policemen, but my wife said, hey, look, we're lost. We got to be at this place in time. I'm going to go talk to this policeman. How do we get back to the Maryland Institute? He says, well, you got to go down there, and you got down there. But first, lock your doors. Roll up your windows. And he was serious. It was very serious. Because everybody we saw, they're standing there and they're doing something like this. And what it means is, I'm selling drugs. You need any drugs? I thought they were hitchhiking when I first saw it. But it's very poor, very depressed. And a lot of people are out of work.
So the people on the right are cold and wearing clothes.
Mm-hmm.
The people down below is sort of, shirt sleeve weather. The guy right above it doesn't have much clothes on at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of interesting the temperature feeling you get as you move around too.
That's what I saw the gloves. I saw this. At first, I thought it was one of those barrels where they put the fire and stuff, but it's a garbage can. So I said, and we see it now. People going around collecting bottles, and you put out your bottles, and people come in and collect them. So I'm wondering, well, is that what's going on? But they're definitely. I think he's definitely talking about, again, survival, and again, what is this all about? What's the look? He's holding this bottle. His work is about race and sex. Okay, so what's he telling us here? What kind of iconography is he using to talk about race and sex? Race and sex, the pimp, the exploiting of people. Someone mentioned you mentioned the industrial thing, and what's the setting here? During the Industrial Revolution, there was a second migration from the South. He's from the South. A lot of people moved from the South to the North and to the West, looking for jobs. They were begging people to come, comfort, and find jobs in the North because of that Industrial Revolution. Is he saying that these people didn't benefit by that? I'm not sure, because black people did benefit by that. Detroit is really depressed now, but when the automobile industry started building up, you had a job for life. You could buy a home and a car at the same time. It's difficult to do that now.
Well, then there were big ghettos formed where they were very isolated and a lot of poverty. So.
Harlem, incredible. But out of that came the Harlem Renaissance, but it was still very, very depressed. And in some areas still is. There are areas in Harlem that I wouldn't dare walk down by myself. No way. And then there are areas that they're building up and turning into condos.
I have an observation. Yeah, I toured the high school and middle school groups a bit,
Uh-huh.
and their reaction is very consistently that of looking for the vices. They see a painting about vice.
Okay.
And nobody used that word here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's what they think the upside down Jesus is. The trail of vice makes everything upside down.
Oh, interesting. Very good.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
they always want me to tell them if the baby is being purchased or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what. Right, that's what we're all wondering. And maybe this is talking about vice. Maybe, yeah. Is the baby being purchased?
Cigarettes, alcohol, they think
Mhm.
addiction, they think drugs.
Oh. See, if you really want to know, ask a kid. They see right through it,
And they think they think this is a warming barrel.
They think it's a warming?
If they think it has two functions, it's a warming barrel and it's garden.
Hmm. That's very interesting. Great.
I've been struck by the blue sky in the middle, because it's, on the one hand, you can kind of connect it with the two fishing and beautiful, like summer afternoon. But on the other hand, it sort of stands on its own. It's this kind of hopeful, like space. And like there's so much darkness,
Mhm.
around these relationships, and yet like that like draws you in.
Yeah.
Like to this other space, this other place,
Mhm.
beyond like this world.
Mhm.
It is.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, and I've always thought of it as being ultimately kind of hopeful. And maybe that's just me being idealistic, but,
Will you say something?
Oh, I thought it was water.
I did too.
But I see the clouds.
But that could be white caps.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Uh-huh.
yeah, up for us to decide,
I
right?
think all three of the outdoor spaces are another piece that we drive around.
Mhm. Yeah, with the color.
Even in the upper right, even though
Mhm. Mhm.
not kind of destitute of those.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same color with a little number. But I think you're right. I think you're right. Absolutely right. That's interesting about the kids. I love it.
I'm finding myself wondering about the size of the black woman with the cigarette compared to the two people on either side of her.
Mhm. Yeah. Why did he make that shift in scale? What's that all about?
Well, of course, with my previous theory, she's actually a black Madonna.
She does strike me as one of the most powerful people in the piece, especially when we talked earlier about the fishermen.
Uh-huh.
And the, not the one on the man on the left being at the man on the right's mercy, but there being kind of a power imbalance. That strikes me with the man and the woman with the cigarette and the white man with
Mhm.
his hand on her hip.
Uh-huh.
She just strikes me as being very powerful and kind of having a presence over him. I see that too. Yeah.
You see that? What about that little smile on his face? What's that all about? He's happy? Okay, all right.
Looking forward to something.
Do you smoke after sex? I don't know. Yeah.
Do keep coming back to the bricks, the question you asked about, what about the red bricks?
Yeah.
It's a pretty riveting piece of red black there.
It is. It is. He uses that motif a lot in his work, and yeah, I wonder what is that about? What, bricks are so hard to move, and he sort of breaks them. A prison? That makes sense. That makes sense. Because one way of looking at it is that all three of them are in prison, trapped within some kind of cultural undoing.
I think the woman is powerful because I think of all the people there, she's just like, I've got this figured out.
Yeah.
She's very much, she's in control of herself.
Mhm. When I started out, I mentioned that Colescott would Africanize his work. Well, what I was talking about is that there's a different proportional relationship. I'm looking at anyway her, but anyway, there's this proportional relationship of our ideal figure is this 7.5 head figure. Africa is a 4 head figure. So you've got this great big person, and the head is out of proportion to the body. Not as much as in an African piece, but the head is out of proportion. And for some reason, he's painted her with this power, and that's power. Now, we generally think of Jesus. When we think of the cross, we have this stereotypical idea of how Jesus was put on the cross. And in Rome, they lined avenues with crucified people. But we usually see him nailed to a cross. And Colescott doesn't do that. And he's got the holes. I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said he's got the holes.
He's got the holes, yeah.
Well, and a laceration too in the abdomen.
I just, Stephanie mentioned that, a couple of years ago, I did some work on Freedom's Door, and it was about slavery in Baltimore, slavery in Maryland, and it was pronounced the show of the year in Maryland. And I looked at how people were lynched. I did a couple of paintings on how people were lynched. One of the things they did is they tied them up like this. They tied them to the tree or to the post or chained them. And so I'm wondering, is that his reference? I don't know.
And upside down?
Upside down, any kind of way. You name it, if you can imagine it, that was done. It was pretty insane. There was, and people don't really know about the history of the South. There was, in 1919, there was a massacre in Helena, Arkansas, where people just went around shooting black people, just shooting them. It killed, the estimates are staggered, but somewhere around 200 people. No white people were charged. 12 black people were charged, and 150 were given long jail sentence. 12 black people were sentenced to die, but no, there were 5 white people that were killed, but 200 people and no white people were charged, only these black people. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the 12 were not executed. They got out, but that 150 stayed in jail for a very long time, and that was the days of breaking locks like Nelson Mandela did. Oh, by the way, Nelson Mandela owns a piece of my work. Well, he did. Yeah.
I hope you took it with him.
I don't know. Can you do that?
Did you get to meet him?
No, I didn't. One of my patrons, Charlene Hunter Galt, bought it and gave it to him for a birthday present. I think it was his 90th birthday. Yeah. Okay, what else can we see here? He's using a number of devices. This lady especially, she is stopping the movement. In Western, we all, in order for us to understand a work, we have to operate within a shared language. if you give me some Chinese characters, I'll say those are beautiful, but I don't know what the heck you're talking about. But in this, I can kind of guess. We tend to, in Western culture, we read from right to left. He's blocking our way here. We can't get in here because of these figures. So we start up here and we move through the piece, and as she pointed out, other devices are moving us through the piece. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant the way he's breaking this up. I saw it as water, but it's blue paint. But that's the illusion we get. He did a series, and the reason I thought it was water is he did a series of, he called it At the Bathing Pool, and he had black women and white women standing in Colescott is doing something that probably no one else is really doing. He's combining landscape with still life and with these figures. So he has these figures in a landscape. Here he's got a cityscape. Here, I always wanted windows like that in my studio, but that's what he's doing. And this, so I saw this immediately. I went to, oh, at the bathing pool, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it's sky. Who knows? And what is that fish really a metaphor for? Is what I found myself thinking. Back to the vice? I don't know.
Another interesting thing too that I just caught, is that under that man's arm, under the white shirt, is that a little bit of fire or a leaf or the orange?
You know, I never really noticed that. I don't. What do you think?
Also caught my attention.
I think it's the floor.
One way that you can not miss stuff like that, because I missed that, is one of the little tricks that you pinhole it. People think I'm crazy in the museum because I'm standing there like this, you know. But if you isolate the painting from all the stuff around it, there's nowhere in the world you're going to miss something like that. So, any other observations?
Well, there's kind of an echoing of shapes there, actually, with the under his arm and then down further, and then straight up. The hand actually is kind of echoing shapes.
Well, all right. Composition is the bringing together of forms to make a convincing whole. And in order to do that, you have to have, composition is unity plus variety. Unity is sameness, and variety is difference. And so what he's done here is he's using these. Generally, you're going to find three different kind of shapes in here. You're going to find ovoids, you're going to find triangles, and you're going to find rectangles. And so he's using those devices, and if those aren't in balance, which is something that the postmodernists said, oh, the hell with that. But still, still you have to organize. You have to organize your composition, otherwise it's chaos. You have to do it in a way that people can read it. Although I've looked at some of his work, it is pretty hard to read. But it's always, he always gives you something to hold on to, generally a central figure. and things revolving around that central figure. And as you guys have pointed out, that's a powerful one. And the juxtaposition of those two figures is great. And I love her glance with him. That is just precious. One of the things that Mr. Colescott wanted to do, I think myself, Colescott, and I don't know, maybe one or two other blacks are in this museum, have worked in this museum. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so. And that's true sort of all over the country. Colescott is in blue chip galleries, museums all over the country, internationally. But that doesn't happen to many black people. The white world is generally a white man's franchise. Women have fought, the Guerrilla Girls have fought really hard to be a part of this art world, this male-dominated art world. We're making some inroads. This is going to take a long, long time. But to have this man, out of all of the artists in the United States, picked for that 1997 Venice Biennale is just, it's kind of like Obama becoming president, you know? It was that kind of thing. In fact, I have some handouts for you guys of my painting of my reaction to Obama and his presidency. My wife and I went to a party and that night, and people were just crazy. It was pandemonium. And so I did a piece that talked about that. Let me just grab that. Would you pass those around, please? And I think, yeah. Oh, yeah. And this too kind of talks about my affinity for Mr. Colescott's work. Our palettes are, I think, similar in the reds and the greens and the blues, those warm colors. I beg your pardon? Oh.
You're rocking.
Oh, yeah. What did I've forgotten the name of that piece. Welcome to the club. Yeah, it was in a club, so welcome to the club, and welcome to the club. So, if there are no more comments, any other comments? Okay, well, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and it was a pleasure having the opportunity to talk about this incredible artist.